What's going on, everybody? Ryan Pineda here. In today's video, we are going to be talking about how to pick an Airbnb market. Now, as many of you know, I've got 8 Airbnbs in Big Bear, California. They perform extremely well. I love them. And Big Bear's a market that I highly recommend to people. But a lot of people also ask me, where should they go? They live on the East Coast. They live down south. They live in other parts of the country, and Big Bear's not where they want to be. And I think there's a pretty easy way to choose a market, and this is actually the same way that I chose Big Bear. But before I go over what things you need to look for in a market, let me just say that I am a huge fan of Airbnb, and I think it's going to get bigger and bigger as time goes on. I think it's going to become more widely adopted by cities because they're going to see all the different tax benefits that they'll get by taxing the owners. They're going to also see more tourism because of it. So I anticipate it will grow much bigger than it currently is. Also, on top of that, one of the big reasons that I personally love Airbnb is that I get to use it when I want. I was actually just in Big Bear last week with my wife. We went on a little 2-day snowboarding trip. We had a lot of fun. I was the camera guy for her while she was snowboarding, and we just had a really fun vacation. But the sweetest part about it was the moment we left, we already had somebody booked for the next night that was gonna pay for the whole trip. So not only do we get to use it when we want, but it makes money when we don't. So if you've been on the fence about getting into Airbnb, I wanna highly encourage you to take it seriously. Now, let's jump into the 3 different things that I look for when picking an Airbnb market. So the very first thing you're gonna look at when picking an Airbnb market is the location. Now, obviously that's common sense, but let me explain. When I think about location, there are a few different things I'll ask myself. Number 1, would I want a vacation there? As I mentioned earlier, I love to vacation in Big Bear, so it's a location that makes sense for me. Maybe I'm thinking about getting an Airbnb in Reno, but I'm not gonna get the use out of it vacation-wise. I never want a vacation up there, so it would strictly be a business decision to own an Airbnb. I wouldn't get any use out of it like I would in a place where I want a vacation. So I think that's a really important question you gotta ask yourself with location. The second part about location is the management. So I'll tell you, with Big Bear, that part actually sucks. If you're getting charged 30% for management, you will not cash flow any money. In fact, you'll probably be in the negative. And I've heard of other cities charging similar rates, but I've also heard of other cities charging way less, like 10%. So look at what the management companies are charging in that location. But if you plan to do self-management, which is what I do, you're gonna have to look at what you have as resources in that city. And resource-wise, I'm talking about the cleaners and the handymen. Those are the 2 biggest things that are gonna determine whether your Airbnb succeeds or not. Can you trust your cleaners to be there on time every single day and make sure that it's ready for the next guest? Can you get a handyman out there ASAP if something breaks for a guest and they need it fixed right now? And I'll be honest with you, in Big Bear, this is not a plus. The workforce is very small, and so there's not a lot of cleaners. There's not a lot of handymen. It's a lot easier in a big city where you have a bigger job pool. Now, that doesn't mean you can't self-manage and do it. I do it in Big Bear just fine, but it can be tough, and you gotta take that into consideration when picking your location. And I should also add, when I say self-manage, I'm not the one actually managing my Airbnb. I did do that early on when we first started. Once I learned the ropes, I ended up hiring someone else here in Vegas to manage it for me. And I pay her 10%, so it's a lot less than the 30% Big Bear companies would charge me. And so those are the 2 things I want you to think about when you're picking a location. How difficult is it gonna be to manage? What's the workforce look like? And do you want a vacation there? So the second thing you're gonna look at is the ROI. So we always have to get a good return on investment if we're gonna invest. And so we need to look at how much our property's selling for. How much are they renting for on Airbnb? And if we can't rent them on Airbnb, how much are they renting for long-term in a normal rental? And this is simply gonna be your own calculations. You need to first look at how much does a property cost in this area. Let's say I'm interested in the houses that are $300,000. I'm then gonna look at how much does that house rent for long-term if Airbnb doesn't work out. Every market's gonna be different, so you need to look at that calculation. When it comes to renting it on Airbnb, figuring out that is gonna be much more difficult. And there are really 2 main ways to do it. The first is by just going to Airbnb and seeing how much things cost. You're gonna look at the area you're looking at buying in. You're gonna make sure that it's the same bedrooms, the same bathrooms. If you're gonna renovate it, make sure you're looking at properties that are renovated. Make sure that they're the same quality as what you expect to have. My properties are fully renovated, they rent nice, and so they get top dollar. But if you're gonna have this kind of in-between property that's not super nice, don't expect to get top dollar in the same as the other renovated ones. It's the same way that we flip houses. You gotta really make sure that you're comping correctly. So looking at Airbnb is a great resource. If you can also try and contact other hosts in your area. So you can go on Facebook groups for Airbnb in those cities. You can also contact the host directly on Airbnb, see if they'll let you pick their brain, and really just try and figure out how much can I expect to rent these for over a year? What kind of seasons does it have? In Big Bear, we have the winter as the very high point, the fall's kind of slow, summers are good, spring's a little slow again, but overall, we're gonna get a blend of how much it's gonna get every single year. And finding out this information isn't that hard. You could do it just from Airbnb, you can do it just from Facebook groups. But if you wanna pay a little bit of money, there's also a website called AirDNA. AirDNA will give you all of the data in a market. They'll tell you exactly how much things are renting for, they'll give you the occupancy levels, and a whole bunch of other data points. Now, I don't know the exact price of AirDNA, but it's not that expensive. But what I'll say is, either way, whether you use AirDNA or not, you wanna definitely talk to other hosts in the area and get an idea of things you need to know. And once you have that, you can figure out your ROI. Just using rough numbers, if you know that you can buy this house for $300,000 and it's gonna get $60,000 a year in rent, that is a 20% return gross revenue. Now, obviously, if you wanna get complex with it, you wanna take your net profit because we're just talking gross here. But also too, depending on how you buy the property, your cash on cash return might be super big. Think about it, if you put 10% down on the house, you're into the deal for $30,000. What if your net profit was $30,000 as well? Well, now you got 100% cash on cash return. So you can look at your ROI a number of ways and figure out whether it makes sense or not. And this leads me to my third point about picking a market, and that is the state legislation or the city legislation. Are they short-term rental friendly? Well, I've talked about it in Vegas. We are not here. The hotels want you staying on the strip. They do not want you out and about away from where all the activity is happening. And so they make it extremely difficult to do Airbnbs. In fact, it's illegal in most places. Now, the city of Henderson is allowing Airbnbs because they're not on the strip. They don't care. They want to bring more revenue to Henderson. So even though the main market, like Las Vegas, might not be Airbnb friendly, there might be a county or a city right by it that is. Also, before you buy, I would look into whether or not they're talking about changing the rules. Maybe there's a bill that they're trying to get passed that's going to extremely limit some things. Maybe there's a bill that's gonna open it up. I don't know. Just make sure you're checking what kind of legislation is being proposed. The last thing I'll add to the legislation is, does their economy depend on it or not? As I said, Vegas wants you on the strip. Their economy depends on you staying at casinos and gambling. Big Bear's economy actually depends on Airbnb. They do not have enough hotels for all the people that visit Big Bear. And so Airbnb is a way for them to get way more tourism than they otherwise would have. So I don't ever see them outlawing Airbnb because it would destroy their economy. Now, that doesn't mean that they aren't gonna regulate it. They definitely regulate it in a way that I don't like, but I gotta do it and it is what it is. But there's almost zero chance that they ever eliminate Airbnb. So think about that with other markets. How is Airbnb affecting their economy? And those are pretty much the three things I look for when picking an Airbnb market. You can do this all across the country and figure out, does this fit or not? Now, are you gonna find the perfect market that fits everything? They're legislation friendly, the ROI is great, you want a vacation there. You might not, but definitely pick which ones are most important to you. If it's strictly just a business deal for you and you wanna make a great ROI, you're open to almost anywhere. But if you're really passionate about vacationing there and making it a second home, then you gotta pick somewhere that you really enjoy. Maybe the ROI is not as good as somewhere else, but you're gonna gain emotional value by having one there. So make a priority list for yourself on what is most important to you. And also, if you're interested in figuring out how to find good deals in whatever market that you choose, definitely go check out my flipping and wholesaling course. Even though you're not planning on flipping or wholesaling this home, the tools that we use to buy and find great deals are in that course. I've used all of those same techniques to buy my Big Bear properties at significant discounts. So I'll link to that course below. Definitely go check it out. And at some point, I probably will release an Airbnb course detailing everything that we do from the management side, how we furnish, how we find deals, how we calculate the ROIs more in depth. So if you want to see something like that, definitely comment below and let me know if you're interested. But anyways, if you got value out of this video, do me a big favor, go hit the like button. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. Go follow me on all the socials. Until next time, take care.